Dear listeners, in 2015, my guest's father died suddenly from a heart attack. No warnings, no signs, just gone. And in the aftermath of that loss, something became very clear to him, not as a coach, but as a son standing at a graveside asking himself the question we all eventually ask: what am I doing to make sure I don't leave the people I love the way my father just left me? That question became a business. But more than that, it became a mission. And today we are going to talk about what it means to stop reacting to your health and start investing in it before the urgency decides for you. So, hey, dear listeners, welcome back to another powerful episode of Healthy Mind, Healthy Life, where we talk about wellness not as a afterthought, but as the foundation of everything else. I'm your host, Ravi, and I'm really glad that all of you are here today. And today's guest is a health and fitness coach with over 20 years of experience, the founder of TA4 Fitness, and a specialist in helping people over 40 stop feeling stiff, weak, and out of shape and start feeling strong, mobile, and genuinely energized again. So his TA4 system integrates strength, mobility, breath work, and nutrition into a cohesive approach to what he calls health span. Not just how long you live, but how well. So I'll not take much of your time. Let's get started, and please welcome my guest, Stephan Alheim. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate being here.
Amazing, amazing. So, Stephen, before we get into the framework and practical side, I want to start uh with your father. Like, you have talked about losing him suddenly to a heart attack in 2015, and how that changed everything for you. So, what did that loss teach you about health and time that 20 years of coaching before it hadn't quite reached?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So at that point in my life, I had been pretty lucky. I hadn't had any major traumas. I had a pretty lucky life, I have to say. And out of nowhere, a loss like that, when the family history didn't have any, his brother was still alive, 10 years older than him. His sister was still alive. She's 20 years older than him. And his grandma lived to, or his mom lived to 99. So it was just a surprise that the youngest of them, went first. And so it was just such a shock to me, not having dealt with that kind of trauma in my life before, that it really made me just have so much more perspective that life is short, and that you should, after I grieved for a bit, I had to think about things and put life into perspective. And when I realized, that the main thing, that life is short and that I should do what I love the rest of my life, it really kind of made me launch on this career change. I had been coaching part-time on the side, and I didn't love what I did in IT. Did it for 20 years, but I like the people, and I probably would have never left that career if it wasn't for what happened to my dad. And so I took that as an opportunity to just get some perspective, and kind of relook at my life again. And so it was 2015 when my dad died, and 3 years later, I left my career and launched my business. And now I help people, hopefully not have that happen to them. And so my focus is a lot deeper than just what you see in the mirror. It's about training for life, and there's a lot of different components to it. And so I'm just much more happy now, and it definitely was a perspective switch in my life for sure.
Exactly, exactly. And I mean, most people's relationship with their health is reactive. I mean, something goes wrong, a diagnosis, an injury, a scary result on a blood test, and then they start paying attention. You are making a case for the opposite. What is the core misconception that keeps people waiting until the urgency arrives rather than investing before it does? So, if you can share.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question, because so many people are in that situation. They wait to make those life changes after something major has happened. and they've already, lost time off their life. And so my perspective on it is different. I think, especially when it comes to people who are high performers or working really hard, we have this concept that we think that a workout has to be perfect. We need to have 4 hours a week to devote to it. When reality is that anything is better than nothing, and not putting up a zero for the day, as I like to say, and just getting out of your chair to do some air squats, do some box squats, anything like that is going to just start giving you wins that give you the confidence to do a little bit more and a little bit more. And when you get to the point where you've gotten some wins, one thing I always tell everybody is just like you should get blood work every year. There's an important thing called a movement screen you should also have done, and that's going to show you weaknesses in your body and areas where you have opportunities to improve. And when you work on those things, those weak points in those areas that you find in a movement screen, that's where you can start making these small improvements and building a better foundation. And when you have that foundation, it's like you would never want to build a house on a bad foundation because you're just going to have problems with the house. And if you fix your foundation through movement screens and fixing what's kind of underlying there, making the invisible visible, then you can have a much better future of health, and your body already has a better baseline. And so things get easier, and it makes you want to focus more on your health because you're not suffering from these injuries and these small things, and you've got these wins building up, and it just kind of compounds, and it just opens up the door for you for a healthier life.
Exactly. And here, I mean, I would love to mention it's like, and over the 40 population specifically, because that's who you work with, and that's where the stakes become more or most visible. So, what is happening in the body that in that decade that makes intentional investment in the health both, uh, I mean, more urgent and more impactful than any earlier stage?
Yeah, I mean, I believe that's a great question. I believe that, and so I'm 51 myself, and I believe that in your 40s, you start kind of realizing that even in your late 30s, that young body you had that seemed more indestructible and stuff isn't there as much anymore. And what's happened though is, yes, aging does have an effect, but it's also everything we do in our lives. So it's the sitting, it's if you're not active, it all builds up, and then you start getting these mobility compensations, and maybe you've had some surgeries. And so all these factors start coming into play that that start increasing your chance of having something urgent happen. If you're when you're missing range of motion in your body, those small missing range of motion calls compensations. Those compensations add up over time to a point where you might be saying, "Why is my shoulder bothering me? I'm trying to exercise, but I'm having pain in my hips." And so there's a lot of things that start happening with our body as we age, and that's when it comes back to that really trying to get that foundation correct, and fixing the things that have happened to our bodies through life. And so that's why I think it's important as we approach these points in our life where our body's starting to feel our age, 40s, 50s, that we start addressing it and looking at it differently, from a standpoint of if I don't address this, what's my life going to be like in the next 20 to 40 years? And so when you look at that picture, it really kind of opens the door that, you're only going to have more pain and suffering if you don't start putting at least a little bit of time into it today to build up those wins.
Exactly. Yeah. And yeah, definitely. I mean, what you're pointing is, I mean, kind of to a window. I mean, a period like where the biological changes are real and accelerating, but where intentional intervention still has enormous leverage. The difference between someone who begins serious, consistent investment in their body at 42 versus someone who waits until 55 for a health crisis to motivate them is not a small difference in outcome. So yeah, exactly. Mm. Uh, and about TA4 system, um, yeah, it brings together four things, which is strength, mobility, breath work, and nutrition. So I want to understand like why those four specifically, like how they work together, because uh, I mean most fitness conversations focus on one or two of these and ignore the others. So what happens? I mean, if you could share.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think it comes down to how our bodies work. And so I think that a lot of people will focus on one aspect, like being a strength coach or something like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when your goal is to build strength, if you look at it from
Mm,
muscle groups, you're looking at it from a segmented viewpoint. And our body doesn't work in muscles; it works in movements. And
mm,
so, as I started building my system up for adults over 40, I realized that the
mm,
fitness industry has their strength coaches, their yoga coaches, and but they needed more of a comprehensive solution that addresses it all. And so,
mm,
when I started building my programs, I realized yes, we need to have strength because skeletal muscle is the tissue of longevity,
yeah,
but then we also need to have good range of motion, and then you have to have all these supporting things like a good base of breathing is just so important to so many different
mm,
aspects in our life, how we sleep, our ability to deliver oxygen to our body, endurance. And so I started looking at these subcomponents, one of which is also hidden in there is zone two cardio for heart health. And and when you start comparing all the things you should be doing in life rather than just looking at one component, it really comes down to a more of a system view and more of a health span longevity view of how you take care of your body. And that's another reason why I call it training for life and not just looks, because there's much more that goes into training for
mm.
life than just looks.
Got it. Got it. And like because I mean the breathe work, because that's the one that surprises people most when it shows up in a fitness context. Most people think of breathing as something that just happens,
Mhm.
not something that you train. So, what does training your breath actually change in someone's body and daily experience?
Yeah, that's a great question because a lot of people don't understand breath work. And so one thing I do with all my clients, as I mentioned, the movement screen is I test how well they breathe. And a lot of people don't understand that oxygen dropping isn't your signal to breathe; it's carbon dioxide rising. And so if you have a higher sensitivity to carbon dioxide, you have a little bit more air hunger and stuff like that. And if you can
Hmm.
have that come down by proper breathing exercises and learn to create air hunger, they can have a lot of shifts in your body. So people who have cold hands and feet tend to sometimes be mouth breathers or have high
Mhm.
sensitivity to carbon dioxide. And when you perform breathing exercises, you can actually feel more blood flow go into your hands and feet. So you got different small effects like that. They have the mental health benefit because if you
Mhm.
focus on your breathing, it can also serve as like a meditation, a mindfulness. And then thirdly, a lot of people, I try and get my clients to tape their mouth during workouts. And the reason why is because you can be much more efficient when you learn to breathe properly through your nose, deliver more oxygen, but also but also stay more calm and keep your heart rate down. So I see a lot of people in gyms who are mouth breathing and they're running, but if they learn to just breathe more efficiently through their nose, you can train yourself to deliver more oxygen in your body over time and then be more efficient with your energy levels. And so there's just a lot of cool interesting components to breath work. A lot of professional athletes are getting more into it now because they realize that if you're already efficient at a technique, say you're running and stuff like that, sometimes your biggest performance benefits can come from learning to breathe better and deliver more oxygen to your body.
Exactly. And I would to also talk about like for someone who is listening or who is over 40 or who has been meaning to take their health more seriously, who has maybe tried things before and fallen off. So, what does actually beginning with your approach look like? Like, you start with a movement screen. Like, what is that? Like, why is it? I mean, if you can share.
Yeah, definitely. So
Mm,
I like to say that I start with two things that are definitely different than most coaches. So most coaches will say, "What's your goal from a weight standpoint or body composition? What do you want to look like?" I started a little differently, and I say, "Well, what do you want to do in life with your body, and what would being healthy in 80, and what do you still want to be doing at 80 with your body?" And those answers will start somewhere along the lines of, well, I want to continue playing golf or sports or hiking, traveling, playing with my grandkids. And since most of my clients are over 40, those are a lot of things I hear. And so when you start looking just at that avenue, all those components, that all those things that they mentioned have a movement component to them. And so if your underlying ability to move well is strong, then all those things are going to be easier. And so that starts looking at different components then, like countries that have people sitting on the ground and getting up from the ground often have lower fall risks, a lot more health patterns and stuff. And so when we start thinking of movement, getting up from the ground, balance training, all these different things, that's where the assessment now comes in. So then I take my clients after they tell me their goals, which are usually all movement related. And then I say, okay, well, now we have to do a movement screen to see where you're at on that pattern. And a movement screen could be anything from, it's going to have some strength tests for sure. It's going to be baselines of strength. It's going to be mobility, movement, balance control. There's some longevity tests in there, like get up tests. Can you get up from the ground without your hands? And they're all done at different levels because I have all different clients. So if I'm running a basic 90-90 hip mobility test and someone's having a hard time with that, then they're not going to graduate to one of the get up tests from there. So we know we have to work at a safer, lower level. And so once I have that complete picture of how they move, their goals, and what they do want to have a healthy weight, then we build the program from there. And so it has a much more comprehensive view. And then it also gives me a lot of data points to show progress. So if I have a 20-point movement screen on someone, then when we retest in 3 to 6 months, we have 20 points of data outside of just the mirror and the scale to show how much you've improved.
Oh, very true. Yep. And also, like you talk about your clients' results as a part of your father's legacy. That's a meaningful way to carry grief, to let it become purposeful. So, how does thinking about legacy, about what kind of body and health you're building for the decades ahead, change how someone approaches the daily, unglamorous work of actually showing up for this?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, for me personally, and then I'll go into how I relate it to my clients. I use that loss as a strength. And so there are days where I don't want to work out, where I've had a really long day. Most of my days start at 4:30 a.m. and end at 8:30 p.m. because I love what I do and I'm always trying to work and get better at it. And there's days where I'm just tired and I don't feel like working out, and say it's in the afternoon, I have it scheduled. But then I think, what my dad give to still be here today? And I can kind of summon up like that pain almost on even right now, almost on an instant, because he should still be here. And so for me, I like to say that my example of strength that I like to use is and legacy is from my dad. And so when I talk to my clients, I say, I don't have kids, but a lot of my clients do. And I say, what kind of message do you want to, send to your kids? How long do you want to be here for them? And so I think it's about finding what is going to motivate them and digging a little deep to understand, what message they want to send to their kids, or what
Mm,
have they felt in their life that can be something that helps them motivate themselves to do the right things and take care of their health, because every day is a challenge. And I think one of our programmings with our body is that our bodies want to conserve energy, because, and that's been since, for a long time with us, because we, back in the day when we used to have to run for our lives from tigers and stuff, we don't have to do that anymore, but our body still wants to conserve energy. And so you have to have like a little bit of a motivation there, and a little bit of knowledge that you're capable of more than you think you are, and then use the motivation to just go ahead and know it's you have to put in the work to make sure you have a good life and live a good example.
exactly, exactly. And um, if listeners wants to connect with you, what will be the great medium to connect?
Yeah, no, I'm on all of the socials except for probably the only one I'm not on much is Twitter, but which is now X. But I'm on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube, and then you can always find me on my webpage there too, and learn a little bit more about me, and fill out an application there if you're interested in learning about how my coaching works.
Exactly. Amazing. Great. So, dear listeners, what I'll do is I'll put all the links and the details into the show notes for your easy reference. And That's a wrap for today's episode of Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. And if this conversation made you think about what you want your body to be capable of in 10 or 20 years and what you are doing today to build toward that, please let that thought become an action, even a small one today, right? So, Stefan's details and TA4 Fitness will be there in the show notes. And if someone in your life is in that 40 plus window and has been putting this off, please share this episode with them. With this hope, this is your host, Avik, and this is Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. I'll just say, train for the life you want to live, not the one that you are already managed. Take care of yourselves and see you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.